Okay, so we are in Siman Ayin Hey Din Adlakas Hanedas. We're talking about the halachas of candle lighting at the beginning of Shabbos. Okay, so Sif Aleph. Chayav kol adam lahafrish es atzmai b'mlacha od lahadlik es hanedas echol hapachis hatzi shah koidim tzeisa kechavim. We spoke about this when we were analyzing how Shkia comes into play, and we explained that tzeisa kechavim, there are some that always stop a half hour before. Das Rabbeinu, here they add from the Alter Rebbe. What does the Alter Rebbe say? When is Shkia? Like we went through this a couple of weeks ago, if you remember. Shkia would be lahadnik ba'oid hashemer zeirachas beroshe heilanis. The Alter Rebbe says you should really light while the sun is still on the tops of the trees. V'azman mishtana b'kol. It's hard to give a set time to that. As we explained, that you'd have to be on top of the mountain and watching when the sun sets below the tips of the mountain of the things is what he says here. So it's a few minutes earlier. Remember we said when the sun sets. So here will be a little bit earlier, and then you have to calculate at different times a year. It's going to be different. But Pyle, it seems like we mentioned from your very excited rabbi Tuchachinsky that by now we do basically 8.5 degrees when the sun is below the horizon, if I'm not mistaken. So it's roughly, you can look on a calendar, fluctuates the time of year between close to a half hour to maybe close to 40 minutes between Shkia and Tzeis. But we should always be lighting before Tzeis. Now, the Alter Rebbe is saying really B'Rosh Eilanis, which is even before. It's 20. It would be okay. You have at least 18 minutes before, but that's something else. Now, Isha, the Alter Rebbe continues. They're quoting from the Alter Rebbe here. Isha sheshacha. What happens if a lady forgets to light Shabbos candles? She forgot to do it between Shkia and Tzeis. I'm sorry, she forgot to do it before Shkia, and now v'niskara b'bein hashmashos. She remembers between Shkia and Tzeis. So now the sun is dips below the horizon. So now it's Shkia. And now in this half hour period between that and Tzeis, she forgot. So and she remembers. So what does she do now? So the halacha is like this. Remember, we spoke about that if she forgets, she has to add one more forever, as we'll see soon. So obviously, she doesn't want to do that. She remembered, and it's anyways a suffix this. So what should she do? So the halacha is like this. We allow her that she can go and she could ask a goy to light it for her. Now, in parentheses, they put over here, rak ner echad. And we spoke about this in the shiurim, that there are those who say that when you ask the goy to light a candle for you, he should only light one, because that's the minimum of what you need, and then that's it. But if you remember, we mentioned then that lav dafke, because the way the Alter Rebbe writes it in the Seder of Hachnasa Shabbos, in the Siddur, he writes over there neiros, which is plural. So it looks like you could actually ask the goy to light as many as you need, maybe just do two instead of more. But either way, it looks like you could ask them. You could ask them to do more, and then then you do the same thing. He lights it. Try not to look, or she lights it, and then you make a bracha before you have hana from it, and then tevarich az, but you have to change the bracha. You're not saying lahadlik ner, which means to light, because you're not lighting. So instead you say al hadlakas ner, on the lighting of a ner, or a ner, whatever, ner, usually we say one. So you're basically saying that you're making a bracha on the fact that the candles are being lit. Now the reason why we allow this is because it's bein hashmashis. It's amira la'akum, and it's bein hashmashis, and it's l'tzayrich, and for Shabbos, and all the other things we're going to mention. Imagine a lady forgets to light Shabbos candles. It's a very intense thing for them. They're very close to the mitzvah. So because of it's a tzorich, and it's the Shabbos, and it's bein hashmashis, and it's only amir l'rakum, so all these things, so you could ask the guy to do it, and then you can make the bracha. Now, it's a chiddush, because there are some people who say that if you don't light it, then what's the point? The whole point is you're supposed to light it. But Kitzur, the Alter Rebbe says no. The idea of candles, as we mentioned, is the light. So who cares where you're getting the light from? As long as the light is coming and it was lit for Shabbos. Now, you have to ask someone to do it for you, but that's okay. Let me just finish the sif, yeah? Now, now, according to the Kitzur, if you go to Shul and it's early, but they already are davening Ma'ariv and they already say Mizmor Shir L'Yem HaShabbos. And then in parentheses, remember, the Alter Rebbe didn't agree with that, remember? So in parentheses, they add here, in places where they're Mekabel Shabbos by saying Mizmor Shir L'Yem HaShabbos, then you accept Shabbos with them. But Aval Medinas Elu by us, says the Alter Rebbe, Afal Pisha Imrim Mizmor, even when you do say this capital to him, Ein Mekabel Shabbos. That's not Kabbalah Shabbos. When is Kabbalah Shabbos? Ela B'Midas Baruch Hu. When we say Baruch Hu. Now, as we mentioned then, it's hard to know what would be the minig Chabad, because we usually, our minig is officially to daven later after Tzeis. So it's hard to say. This is only when you're being accepting Shabbos through davening. We accept Shabbos by the Zman. So it's hard to say what would be the halacha, but it seems like for the way the Alter Rebbe writes it, it seems like Baruch Hu would be the time according to him. We mentioned Reb Chaim Noah says maybe that you could really go with Mitzvah Shir. Okay, so that's already And this would be, according to the Kitzur, they could take in Shabbos with davening 2 hours before Shabbos. That Alter Rebbe doesn't say that. The Alter Rebbe writes, from Plaga Mincha, which is an hour and a quarter. An hour and a quarter before it says, that's when you could start being Makabel Shabbos through davening or lighting candles or anything. Before that, it's too early. Now, the Kamak and Chal Shabbos Alamut, he says, even though it's early, so according to them, 2 hours, according to us, Plaga Mincha, if the minyan davens from Plaga Mincha, and they say, according to them, Mizmor Shir, and according to us, Baruch Hu, then Asurim B'Kol HaMlachos, it becomes Shabbos, and you're not allowed to do anything. Now, let's say you don't live here, you're visiting from somewhere else. Like you guys will see next week, lots of them. Chol Olav Shabbos miyad, still it's Shabbos. Kishamru b'tzibur mizmashir liyam Shabbos, or according to us when they do Baruch Hu, because that's when the community takes it in, even though you yourself don't usually do it. Now, here sheyesh b'shtei batik nesiyos. What would happen if it's a community that has a few shuls? So let's say here there's a bunch of shuls in the area. So then, and some of them probably the shtibel, the Chassidish shtibel probably davens late. So then, each shul can make its own schedule sort of and take in Shabbos. You can't take in Shabbos late, obviously, but you can take in Shabbos bismanoi instead of doing it earlier, even though other shuls are davening and taking it in earlier. Okay, yes. What's your question?
When we say taste, we're saying the final taste you talk about, the taste of the guy.
Well, according to us, it's that it means the guy. Yeah. We don't. Yeah, it could be he was talking about. Good question. I wonder how he passed him because he was Hungary. He was from Hungary, and maybe he passed him like Rabbeinu Tam. I don't know, but according to us, it doesn't matter. According to us, it would be the Goinim completely. Even those who even most people, even him, unless he was Satmar, which I don't think he was. Then they're machmir like the Rabbeinu Tam, which means they take in Shabbos like us. They just only take out Shabbos later, right? So
what not is there last days, if there is any?
Not really. There are some kulas that if it's between the tzeis of us and the tzeis of Rabbeinu Tam, and someone has some sort of extreme situation, there are those that would say, but not us. Alter Rebbe, the way we do it, because we paskin. Yeah, why? Because we paskin like the Goinim L'Kula. So if you pass like the Goinim L'Kula, means you take out Shabbos early, then there's no way you could take in Shabbos late. If you literally are doing Malacha by their tzeis, then Friday you can't say, well, in an extreme situation, maybe it's not Shabbos. No way. You literally are doing Malachas then. After Shabbos. Shabbos. Okay, base, yeah? Fine. Mutter, a mitzvah, laharbes, benedes, the covet Shabbos. There's a mitzvah, you know what? Let's do base and then we'll stop. Mitzvah laharbes benedis lekavet Shabbos. There is a minig to have a lot of candles in the honor of Shabbos, like we mentioned. Okay, now and also we said that the idea of those that are mahader in Erev Shabbos, the Gemara tells us, the Medrash tells us that they'll be zeichet to banim that are connected to Torah, so it's a beautiful thing. Now, yesh noigin lahadlik asara. Some people have a minig they light 10 candles. But why do they light 10 candles? Because aseret hadibris. The yesh madlikin shiva. Some people light 7. Why? Because the world was created in 7 days. So there's different minhagim, I guess you could say. But at minimum, you should light 2. Neged zachar v'shama. Again, our minig is we do 2, and then we also add per child, as we brought where the Rebbe mentioned, each kid brings more light, etc. Now, let's say it's a shas atchak, a person is traveling, they don't have, it's whatever. So then, gam b'chad sagi. So then, technically, 1 would be even enough. And as we mentioned when we did it, that if you don't have enough money, so first you buy a piece of challah, and then the next thing you would buy is 1 candle, and after that you'd buy wine, right, in that order. The candles should be long if possible, because it shouldn't just be that you light it and then you go to shul and you come back and it's gone. It should be that it at least is lit until after the eating. Not just when you eat, but according to Alter Rebbe, it should really be there till night if you're taking in Shabbos early. Again, in those days, they probably, without candles, they probably took in Shabbos, even if it was the earlier time, it's still a little bit, teeny bit light outside. So it would have to be that it's already dark outside. Neder Shabbos come before also Neder Chanukah, like we mentioned, because their shalom brings peace, and therefore that's a more important thing. Okay, now, V'yahader liknes nederis yafim. You should try to find beautiful candles, nice ones. The Amar Ravuna, like Ravuna says, haragil b'ner Shabbos. Those that are accustomed to lighting Shabbos, they try to make it beautiful. Heavy and leibanim tamidei chachamim. They're going to be zeichet to have children that are tamidei chacham. Shenamar kiner mitzvah v'Torah. There's a connection between mitzvah and Torah to candles and fire. Ayidei ner mitzvah, through the ner of the mitzvah of candles, ba'er Torah, you'll be zeichet to the light of Torah. This is also why women have a minhag that they daven during the time of candlelighting. They should have sons who are connected and invested in Torah. And then he adds from the Alter Rebbe, there are some beautiful tefillas, you could see them in the non-Chabad versions, but the Kitzur, we don't, it's not in our siddur, so it doesn't seem to be that the nusach is our minhag, but the concept is definitely in line with what's happening. There's also a minhag that women have. A good thing is that they should give tzedakah during this time before they do this tefillah. And one of the reasons I saw is because they're asking Hashem almost like for a favor, for tzedakah. Their kids should be tzaddikim, connected to Torah. So at minimum, they should do a tzedakah also before. Now, if you look at the bottom, they bring from the minhagim that v'tzarech lahazir ukechol hadarush es hanashim v'abonis hamadlika shalei l'taltachas Hashem as kupus tzedakah lachar adlaka. You have to make sure if they're giving tzedakah, they shouldn't mix the tzedakah and the candle lighting. In other words, once they light candles at Shabbos, you can't move the pushka. So any pushka and tzedakah should only be done before, and then they shouldn't be moving it. So it should be in the right place, or the husband should move it, but probably better it should be already placed there, taken care of before, and this way no one makes a mistake. Now, let's say there's a lady who unfortunately has a challenging time raising her children, or she doesn't have children. There's a skula that she should say after she lights the haftarah of the first day of Rosh Hashanah, which is the story of Chana and Shmuel Hanavi. And she should know what she's saying. And she should say it with a lot of kavana in order to do it. Okay, so let me stop the recording here, and then I'll just tell you the seder.